If you want to take down a house, there are basically two ways to do it.
Right, the sledgehammer or the termites.
Exactly. You can take a sledgehammer to the front door, which is loud, chaotic, and everybody sees it.
Hmm.
Or, well, you can just let the termites quietly eat away at the foundation.
Until the whole thing just collapses under its own weight.
Yeah, and today is March 19, 2026. And we're actually watching both of those demolition methods play out in real time across the federal government.
We really are.
Our mission for today's deep dive is to look at a stack of sources covering three massive legal and fiscal earthquakes.
Right, the March 17 court ruling on the U.S. Agency for Global Media, the fiscal math of the new OBBBA budget, and the Save America Act.
Exactly. We want to understand how these seemingly separate events are all tied to a massive constitutional tug-of-war between executive branch reforms and congressional mandates. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, let's start with the sledgehammer approach, which just hit a massive judicial brick wall 2 days ago.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, a federal judge effectively vacated the administration's attempt to dismantle the Voice of America, or VOA. They ordered the immediate reinstatement of 1,042 employees.
Because the court ruled that Kari Lake, acting as an unconfirmed advisor, completely lacked the legal authority to do this under the Vacancies Act.
Exactly. I mean, you can't just put an unvetted advisor in charge and let them fire everyone. What's fascinating here is why the judge ruled this way.
Right, the whole statutory minimum argument.
Yes. The administration tried to argue they could shrink the agency to a skeleton crew of just 105 people to save money, but the court said no.
Because doing that without a reasoned basis violates the Administrative Procedure Act, right?
Right.
Congress already appropriated funds specifically for those broadcasting activities.
Exactly. You simply cannot just override legislative intent.
It's like a corporate CEO trying to close a vital division by just locking the doors, but the board of directors already paid the rent and legally mandated the division stay open.
That is a perfect analogy. You can't just ignore the board. And that legal precedent is a direct roadblock to the administration's broader Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, strategy.
Because that entire initiative relies heavily on shrinking the federal workforce.
Right, using strict hiring ratios and massive reductions in force. The courts are basically signaling that you cannot bypass established laws just to achieve workforce optimization.
So if the sledgehammer is illegal, I guess that brings us to the termites.
The fiscal math.
Yeah, because they can't legally shrink agencies through unilateral memorandums. Sweeping changes are instead happening through automatic budget mechanisms.
We see this really clearly with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBA.
Right.
To be completely impartial here, the administration points out that this bill fulfills major campaign promises, like eliminating the tax on tips and overtime.
Which sounds great on paper, but the Congressional Budget Office projects those cuts will create a $1.9 trillion deficit for 2026 alone.
Yes, $1.9 trillion.
Yeah. But wait, if the deficit is soaring because of permanent tax cuts, aren't these automatic Medicare cuts essentially a backdoor way to shrink government without facing the political heat of a direct vote?
Well, that is where automating mechanisms come in, specifically PAY.
Pay as you go.
Exactly. It dictates that if you add massively to the deficit over here, the law automatically slashes mandatory spending over there to pay for it.
Wow.
So because of the sheer size of that $1.9 trillion hole, we are looking at a staggering $536 billion automatic cut to Medicare by 2034 without a direct congressional vote.
So the mechanics of the budget are doing the demolition work for them, exactly like critics are arguing.
Right. Now, the administration notes they're combating costs with the CRUSH initiative, which targets healthcare fraud.
But when you pair this with projections that the Social Security OASI fund will be entirely depleted by 2032, I mean, the financial math is forcing an incredible contraction.
Massive contraction of the safety net, yes.
What is ironic is that while the federal bureaucracy is shrinking itself through these budget termites, they're stepping heavily into state territory.
Massive pivot toward local elections, yeah, through the Save America Act.
Right. The administration argues it's necessary to ensure only citizens vote by requiring strict documentary proof of citizenship, like passports or certified birth certificates.
This raises an important question, though.
If states are suddenly forced to verify certified birth certificates with zero federal funding to help them, won't this create massive logistical chaos right before the 2027 local elections?
That is exactly the concern with unfunded mandates. The ACLU argues this acts as a de facto poll tax.
Because getting a certified birth certificate isn't free.
No, it takes time off work, travel, and processing fees. They estimate this will disproportionately burden 21 million voters.
Particularly married women with name changes, minorities, and the elderly. So the mechanism itself becomes the barrier.
Exactly. While the federal government shrinks its own bureaucratic footprint, it's mandating costly new operational hurdles for the states.
So what does this all mean? Why should you, the listener, care?
Because these aren't just abstract DC policy battles happening in a vacuum.
No, they directly impact the survival of your healthcare safety nets, your tax reporting, and the exact documents you need to bring to the ballot box.
The fallout from these legal and fiscal shifts will be felt everywhere.
Which leaves us with this to think about. If government reshaping increasingly relies on natural attrition and automatic budget cuts rather than legislative debate, what happens when an agency critical to your daily life quietly shrinks past the point of being able to function at all?